Hello and welcome. This is video number 9 in a 13-part series about World War II. And in this video, we will talk about the Holocaust. Now, if you watched the previous video in this series, that's a good lead in to the information I'll be going through today. If you haven't viewed that video, I would really encourage you to do so. It sets a lot of the context for what will be discussed in this video. Because in this video, I'm going to focus on the worsening conditions that Jews faced in particular, and other people that they deemed inferior generally. So let's get started. As emigration slowed down and less people were leaving Germany, that's when conditions got gradually worse for the Jews that were still living there. This is when we begin to see Jews segregated into specific portions of cities. This is where the term ghetto comes into play. Ghetto is a term that just refers to a segregated area. And so one of the things that would start to happen is in bigger cities, and not necessarily even German cities, but in some cases cities in conquered territory of Germany, Jews would be put into a portion of a city. And then if you look at the picture here, what the people are doing is they're building a brick wall. And what would happen is they would literally have a wall built holding them into this portion of a city, and then basically be cut off from the basic things people take for granted every day for survival: having food, having water, having those basics, medicine, things like that. And the goal was to round up Jews, put them into these ghettos, cut them off, and let them die of starvation and disease. And Hitler was hopeful that this would be a process that would go fairly quickly. One of the challenges to this, though, is that human beings have a tendency to be pretty good at surviving, and Jews did not die quickly enough in this type of environment. And with death not coming fast enough, Hitler and the Nazis will move on to what they refer to as the final solution. With the final solution, we basically see the phase begin where genocide is the order of the day. Genocide is a term that refers to the killing of an entire group of people. And so now the efforts with the Jews and others deemed inferior was to try to systematically kill them. And this would begin by, as Germany conquered territory, for example, sending the SS in, which were the people most specifically involved with killing Jews and other people deemed inferior, to send them in to try to find people like Jews, and in many cases simply shoot them and move on. Now, those that didn't get caught up in the events with the killing squads, with the SS killing squads, they would be sent to concentration camps. Now, in some cases, especially early in this process, those concentration camps would be work camps where there would be some kind of labor gained from these prisoners, and they would basically be worked to death. In time, camps would be made that had some work opportunities, but were more geared towards simply killing the people that arrived at those camps. Now, the killing camps, the ones specifically built to try to kill as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, came into operation starting in 1942. Probably one of the most known and notorious of these extermination camps was Auschwitz. And these are some pictures taken from Auschwitz. One of the things that these camps would have is they would have gas chambers in them. The picture on the upper part, those are people who are visiting Auschwitz, and they're standing in one of the gas chambers. At those killing camps, people that were deemed as people that needed to die right then would be simply pushed into these gas chambers. They would be told that they were going to be taking a shower. A lot of times the people that ended up in those simply had arrived by train that morning and were being sent into a gas chamber that day. And then when they went in, presumably to take a shower, that's when gas would come in from the ceiling. The people would be killed in a matter of minutes, and then the bodies would be removed, taken to gas chambers. I'm sorry, not gas chambers, to ovens to burn the bodies, crematoriums to burn the bodies, and a new group of people would be taken in, and the cycle would happen just over and over again, hour after hour, day after day. The camps that were most highly equipped with these gas chambers could kill as many as 6,000 people a day. Now, through the process of the Holocaust, Jews specifically, about 6 million were killed. And of those that were living in Germany and the area at the time, less than 4 million actually survived by the end of the war. And then, as far as other people that were deemed inferior based on all kinds of criteria, about another 6 million people were killed. So, altogether, and you're going to see variations in numbers from different sources, but somewhere to the tune of around 12 million people or so were killed simply because they were deemed unworthy of living by Hitler and the Nazis. Now, one last thing I'd like to take a second to point out is we can look at a topic like the Holocaust and wonder why there maybe wasn't more outrage for the whole process, going back to the Nuremberg laws and then everything that happened at the end. And I think it's important to point out that the way people perceive what is happening in the moment is shaped largely by what the normal environment is that people are living in. And so if you go back to the Nuremberg laws of 1935 and setting up marriage restrictions, for example, saying that Jews and non-Jews are not allowed to get married, well, there would have probably been very little reason in the United States for people to hear about that legislative change and think very much of it. What I've got on the screen right now is the United States and marriage laws related to race and that existed. If you look at the map, the states that were shaded in red had race restrictions for marriage up to the year 1967. So we're talking more than 2 decades after World War II was over. That portion of the country, for example, did not allow a black person and a white person to legally get married. The yellow states did have race laws that they got rid of between 1948 and 1967. So about a third of the country got rid of race laws that they had in the years after World War II. But if you go back to the 30s, the majority of the country had laws that restricted races that could get married. So the idea that Jews and non-Jews couldn't marry in Germany wouldn't have been thought of in the least. One thing you can note that Kansas, though it did have some race restrictions, repealed those in the 1800s. So our state was definitely ahead of the curve when it came to that. And then one other thing to point out, the idea of and this was especially noted in the video that you watched yesterday, when it came to having places where Jews were allowed or not allowed and having this separation. They showed some of the places like benches and things like that. Segregation was something that was legal and allowed in our country for a long time. That didn't officially end until 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education decision by the Supreme Court. But if you look at the map there, again, the southern part of the country had segregation laws in place, at least up until 1954. Now, they may have still tried to implement segregation after that, but technically it was not allowed. But again, you can see that many states had segregation. Kansas was one. It says local option, and basically what that meant is kind of county by county, city by city. They could make the decision whether to segregate or not, at least prior to 1954. So again, many of the states in our country had segregation when the 1930s and 1940s were going along. So for those kinds of things to happen in Germany as it related to Jews, we maybe didn't have our segregation based on whether you were a Jew or a non-Jew, but we certainly did based on race. So again, context is important for understanding how people feel about certain things at certain times. That doesn't mean segregation was good or race laws were good with marriage, but that was what was normal at that time, and I think again that's important to recognize at least. Well, I hope you found the information in this video helpful to better understanding the really, really terrible aspect of World War II, which was the Holocaust. Thanks for watching.